All right, and now we're going to talk about the end, which hopefully you read, and maybe you hate it, and probably you don't like it, and maybe you are confused. And so I want to talk about a few things backing up right to like where I just left off. So we start and we have Lenny, and we know what has happened with the puppy, right? Like we probably have seen this coming, sadly. And he is sad and distraught because he knows he did something wrong and it was an accident because there's not a mean bone in his body, but he accidentally kills the puppy. I want to point out on page 85 that Lenny starts swearing at the puppy, right? When he's like, how dare you basically die on me? And then he says a whole lot of like terrible, terrible language. Um, I think this is the first time we've heard him like swear of his own volition without like repeating anything. Um, he is swearing because this is what he's seen, right? Anytime he sees somebody have like a deep feeling, Lenny, I think, feels things more outwardly than a lot of the other people do. Um, but like this is what's been modeled for him, right? And he's so innocent and childlike that he just picks up on the things that people around him do. And so now in this moment, like he's sad and he doesn't know how to be sad because nobody around him knows how to be sad or vulnerable. And so he just starts swearing at the puppy, which just shows like how much he has picked up on, right? Like it's awful. It's sad that this is the culture that is being like perpetuated with them. And then Curly's wife comes in and he asks her to leave because George doesn't want him there. And she says like, am I harming you? And my question is like, is she? Right? She seems to think he's not, but I also think that she's living like out of her hurt. She's living very selfishly and she's not thinking through what this might be doing to him. So again, like this is just another example of like her being hurt and being unable to see someone else's hurt. And she's like, I'm not harming you by being here, but like we know that she is, right? Even if what happened didn't happen, I think that she is. Her presence is hurtful and harming, and she can't see that because she's so sad and lonely and can't express that, articulate that, or even come to terms with that, right? Which is the story of this whole book, and I think is the question I'm supposed to be asking myself again, over and over and over and over. In what ways am I like these people? Because it's hard, right, to be vulnerable. It takes great courage, and when you feel so lonely, it's hard to find that courage in just yourself. But then she sits there and there's kind of this tender moment. And I just want to point out quickly, this is the second time that someone has opened up to Lenny about something else that they've never really talked to anyone else about. She tells him her whole backstory, just like Crooks did. Crooks had never really told anybody about his life, but there's something about Lenny, just this disarming like presence, right? His ability to just sit there and like not really listen because he's never really listening, but like he's just there, which I think these something that these people have never had. So she tells him her whole backstory about how she wanted to be famous and all these different things, and how basically like she didn't trust her mom, right? Like so like this distrust goes deep where like she's waiting for that letter. She thinks that their mom stole it. She marries Curly just kind of as like a, I don't know, last ditch, like just to get out of the life that she had, but she doesn't like him. She articulates that she doesn't like him. Um, and I want to remind us really quickly of when we watched the movie Dead Poet Society, we read a poem by Langston Hughes. It starts with the question, what happens to a dream deferred? And it goes through like a list of things. Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Does it do this? Does it wait? Does it stop? And then the last line is, does it explode? And when we watched Dead Poet Society, I think that Neil Perry was an example of like an explosion, right? Like he didn't know who to open up with or be honest to. And we know that that movie ended tragically. And I think that's what is happening with Curly's wife as well. She had this dream, but there was no one else in that dream with her. She didn't know how to make it happen. She didn't know how to trust anyone or have anyone bring her along, or you know what I mean? Like, so she was stuck with just like kind of this out of the reach dream that she didn't know how to actually reach. Just like so many of the men around her, George and Lenny are not the only ones who have a dream of a farm. Many of the other workers do, but they don't know they don't have each other. They don't have a vision. They just have like this far away dream that they then like gamble and drink and prostitute away, which is kind of what Curly's wife did as well in her own way. So she doesn't know how to like reach for that, but she doesn't know how to let go of that. And I think that there's like an explosion of sorts that's happening. And obviously this ends really, really terribly. And then we know what happens. Lenny accidentally kills her. It happens just exactly like the ways we've seen all these foreshadowing. She invites him to touch her hair because it's soft, and he does it. And then she freaks out, and then he freaks out, and it's awful. In her death, though, the author spends like a chunk showing us how innocent she is now that she's dead. And I think that he does that on purpose, right? Like, it's easy to hate Curly's wife, but deep down, not even all that deep down, she's just this innocent little, like, baby. She's so young, and I think he makes that clear just to say, like, this is what happens when people are so alone that they don't know what to do. The other thing that I want to point out, again, not super plot wise, but as soon as Candy finds Curly's wife and then goes and gets George, the dream is immediately dead. Like, nothing has happened. They haven't decided anything, but like, they find Curly's wife and George is like, oh, it's over, because we know that now Lenny is either going to be locked up or he's going to be dead. And without Lenny, the dream is immediately dead. We talked earlier about like who needs who more, right? Does Lenny need George more? Does George need Lenny more? And this is one of those moments where I would argue like George needs Lenny. There's something about his innocence and his persistence and his like childlike holding on to a dream that like no one else can be as vulnerable as him to admit that they have like this actual dream. And so the moment that Lenny is gone, the dream is dead. Nothing has changed. They still have the same amount of money. They still can work hard. It might be a little bit harder because Lenny's the best worker, but like immediately without Lenny, the dream is dead, which is awful. Another quick moment. There's a person named Whit who we've never even met who like excitedly goes to get a gun to kill Lenny, which I think shows again like just like the horror of their life. Like, he's excited to kill someone because at least it's something happening, right? Again, Curly's wife also like Curly's wife or response to his wife being dead, I think is wildly inappropriate, where instead of like being sad, instead of staying with her body like they tell her to, he's like, oh, I'm just gonna go kill Lenny, right? Like, he doesn't know how to feel anything. I think he must be sad. I don't think that theirs was a super like full of love relationship, but like he should be a little bit sad, I think. And yet he's either masking that or truly feeling nothing and just like responding in anger, which is again just like the language thing, just what they do when they're feeling vulnerable. And then we have George and Lenny. And we know that George kills Lenny, which some of us have seen coming from the beginning of the book, from that video that I made you watch. A couple things that I want to point out about that is when George and Lenny are talking, George says to Lenny, you remember nothing that happens, but you remember every word I say, which is like beautiful and tragic in that like we're reminded once again how much Lenny loves George. He's not able to like hold a lot of information. He forgets things. He does things accidentally. He freaks out. He remembers everything that George says because he loves George, because that's his person. There's a great power in like the word us, like where the word us comes up over and over as like Lenny is talking and George makes Lenny like talk about the things they're going to do, and they just keep saying like there's a power in the us of George and Lenny, and I think there's power in that as well. And then I just want to talk really quickly. I don't want to overanalyze it because I want to force you to think a little bit, but I want to talk really quickly about the last line. Curly and Carlson look after them. So Curly obviously being like terrible, and Carlson like not being a character who seems to have changed a lot throughout the book. They look at Slim taking George away after George has killed Lenny, and Slim gets it, and Slim is sad and hurts with him. And Carlson says, now what the hell you suppose is eating them two guys? And we see once again like this contrast of Slim is different. Slim has clearly like had people in the past. George obviously had Lenny and is hurting right now, right? He did what Candy should have done for, or wanted to do for the dog, because he thinks it's better. I honestly don't know if it is, but Curly and Carlson don't get this. They can't understand this human reaction of grief to like the loss of a friend, or the grief at being the one to actually kill him. So again, it just shows that contrast of like Lenny basically changed a lot of characters in this book. He gave them something. He gave them hope. He gave them empathy. He gave them compassion. He changed George, I think, for the better, in a way that like these other callous men who won't let themselves feel anything can't understand. That's all I'm going to say for now. There's a lot more to say about it. There's a lot more happening. If you have questions, please reach out. I want to talk to you about all of those things. But also, I look forward to talking next week in our like little Zoom calls or hearing your thoughts. I will obviously have more to say, but like I want you to do most of the talking, so come prepared for that. Let me know if you need anything else. You are great. I hope this all makes sense. Seriously, reach out with questions, and we will talk next week.